Thank you. I am Frank DiGiovanni. I'm the Director of Financial Assets for the Ford Foundation and your Master of Ceremony for today's events. We're going to start by showing you a short video on the Better Than Cash Alliance, and then Luis Ubiñas, the President of the Ford Foundation, will begin the formal program.
I think in today's modern world, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to carry only cash and to have only cash. Currently, 90% of people living on under $2 a day lack access to formal financial services.
There are significant sums of money flowing from governments and development organizations in the form of distribution of benefits. If we were to transition these programs to distributing these benefits in the form of electronic payment, we have the opportunity to bring this population into the financial mainstream.
We know that electronic transfers work. When those payments go to banks, people save. It might only be 50 cents, it might only be $1, but they save. The people take those savings and build businesses.
But also for corporations. There are many businesses that work with communities that are hard to reach through the traditional banking system. So if you think of those who are buying from small farmers and producers in rural areas, mobile banking will allow them to make payments electronically and instantly.
In parts of Afghanistan, we've seen then shifts to electronic payments can actually help reduce fraud and waste, and thereby improve the actual salaries that Afghan police officers receive.
If you look at the experiences in Haiti after the earthquake, electronic vouchers and mobile money were used to get payments to people quickly. People who received electronic transfers got their resources 3 days ahead of others.
The benefits of shifting to electronic payments are multiple. It decreases costs of the transactions. It also promotes transparency and accountability in the flow of capital. And it's also a safer way for recipients to access money.
To transition from cash to electronic requires a lot of technical support, coordination amongst many government agencies and the banking infrastructure and the mobile money infrastructure working together to make sure that this happens.
These kinds of technological transformations don't happen easily. For these cash transfers to happen, the backbone has to exist.
In many parts of the world where economies are developing and populations are in the greatest areas of need, electronic payments are not migrating fast enough, because you're not seeing the right blend of government, NGO, and private industry partnership.
The Better Than Cash Alliance is partnership between governments, non-governmental organizations, and businesses who believe that creating an electronic financial services infrastructure for the poor can greatly improve their lives.
We hope the Alliance will help amplify the opportunity that's there for many, many more people to be reached through formal access of financial services.
The Better Than Cash Alliance will offer technical assistance. There will also be a system of peer-to-peer learnings where governments who have already transited to electronic transfers will bring their knowledge and experience to the governments who are starting the process.
Eventually, the transition from cash to electronic payments will have massive social impact.
And if we can commit to moving our payments onto these types of more modern systems, we can really be the tip of the arrow, helping an entire industry shift the way it does its work. We can start to help billions of people move out of extreme poverty.
If this is working, there you go. Let me first take a moment to thank everyone for being here today. It's a testament to how important this topic is that we laid out as many places as we could, and yet we have standing room only. It speaks to how important this alliance is. At Ford, we wear a lot of different hats and take on a number of different responsibilities as an organization dedicated to social change. But one of the responsibilities we've long seen as crucial to our mission is that of convener, an institution that brings together multi-sector groups of individuals and organizations from the private sector and the public sector from the nonprofit sector and philanthropy, people who are working together to bring social justice to as many people as possible. So it is fantastic. It's a great privilege to welcome all of you here to the Ford Foundation for what I hope is going to be a fruitful and productive conversation. And I, in particular, want to welcome Her Royal Highness Princess Máxima of the Netherlands, honorable ministers, excellencies, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. It's not every day that I get to have this distinguished group in my building. I also welcome our partners, the people who work with us day to day, not just on this initiative, but on a slew of other interwoven activities, day to day, who've taken the trouble to travel, in some cases from other continents, to join us here today. So thank you all for being here. Now, I have to tell you that the Ford Foundation is exceptionally pleased to be a founding member of the Better Than Cash Alliance, to be hosting this event, because the Alliance represents what we believe is a critical tool in the fight for democratic and accountable government, a critical tool in the fight for economic fairness, and a critical tool for financial inclusion. Think about that. These have been, for a very long time, fundamental goals of the Ford Foundation's mission, something we think about every single day. At the same time, we're an organization that thinks a lot about technology and the role of technology in social justice. We believe that technology, and the folks from Omidyar are here, and they've been just wonderful, wonderful role models for us in this. We believe that technology is a central tool in our collective work to broaden economic, social, and political opportunity and inclusion for even the poorest and most marginalized people. At Ford, we have vastly expanded our roster of technology-oriented grantees. Today, we're spending tens of millions of dollars in countries around the world fighting to bring technological access, technological tools into the fight for social justice. And the Better Than Cash Alliance represents an amazing effort to merge these goals of greater economic and financial inclusion, with the promise offered to all of us by rapid adoption of digital technology. This combination that has the potential to transform, to bring people into the financial mainstream in a way they never have been before. We believe it could be a critical tool in beginning the process of not only raising living standards, but also breaking this relentless, never-ending, for the 75 years the Ford Foundation has existed in the millennia before them, this never-ending cycle of intergenerational poverty. And I was recently in Peru, and I saw firsthand the impact of electronic payments. And if any of you haven't been to some of these places, pay attention, because I'll tell you, all you need is to see to believe. These payments empower women who previously had no access to bank accounts, no way to save for the future. These women, by necessity, had been typically dedicated to the present, putting food on the table, caring for children, just trying to get by. Payments came, sometimes they didn't. But with electronic transfers, and they will tell you this blankly, with electronic transfers into financial accounts, these women began to think about the future in a different way. They knew when those funds would arrive. They knew where they would be. They knew they wouldn't have to pay fees to get access to them. It was a different kind of future for them. And sometimes $1 at a time, these women saved. Some of these women even built businesses. Now, I always joke with Carolina Trivelli, because every time I turn around, there she is working on something amazing. She was one of our grantees. Now she's Peru's Minister of Development and Social Inclusion, and I'm sure she's going to say a lot about this. But it is that kind of impact that's possible, changing people's lives. And we're seeing these advances all over the world. I just got back from Brazil. And their Bolsa Familia, the conditional cash transfer program, has been using electronic payments to reduce costs to government by 80%. 80%. And in India, where we supported some of the early work to design a national unique ID system, we're seeing social welfare payments being transferred to hundreds of millions of people, someday with bank accounts, someday with tremendous cost savings. These examples show how electronic payments can lead to cost savings for government, reduced leakage, and greater transparency. and speedier and more secure payments. Payments that sometimes make the difference between going to bed hungry and not going to bed at all. So for Ford, supporting this transition of social benefit delivery to electronic payments is absolutely central. We believe it's going to extend our reach, make it easier for us to assist our partners. For example, we're now partnering with 7 governments in Latin America and in Central America to introduce savings incentives into their conditional cash transfer programs. We've already connected 2 of these partners to the alliance. Why? Because we need those accounts. We need transfers directly into the accounts. So it's my hope that today's event will get all of you engaged more directly on this issue, to connect your own partners to the alliance, and to join Ford and all the rest of the folks who are working so hard on this issue, to imagine a world where all electronic payments and the resulting financial inclusion are available to people like those women I've seen in Peru and Brazil, those men I've seen in India, people who rely on these payments, who need them to come that day in a secure way into an account that might someday yield them savings. So thank you for being here. I hope that you're going to engage with the panels, challenge them, ask them questions, and that these emerging market payment demos that we're going to show you really let you experience firsthand the power of these electronic transfers. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Luis. I'm now pleased to introduce Rodger Voorhies, the Director of the Financial Services for the Poor Initiative for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Christine Roth, Deputy Secretary for the United Nations Capital Development Fund, who will formally announce the Better Than Cash Alliance on behalf of all of the funders. As they come up, I'd like to invite the other funders of the Alliance up to the stage. Citi, the Ford Foundation, Luis, if you'd come back up, the Omidyar Network, the United Nations Agency for International Development, and Visa. So if the partners would be on the stage, please, that would be helpful. And then Rodger? Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks, Luis, for hosting us today. It's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome Her Royal Highness, Princess Máxima of the Netherlands, Honorable Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be with you today and speak on behalf of the founders of the Better Than Cash, USAID, Visa, Citi, the Ford Foundation, Omidyar, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It is rare to see such a unique and diverse group of partners united around the same belief, the belief that there is real value in creating electronic financial infrastructure that the world's poor can finally use. Today, of the 2.6 billion people who live on less than $2 a day, 3/4 lack access even to a basic bank account. And financial exclusion is the most severe among women in rural areas. And in some countries, even less than 5% have access to any form of formal financial services. Every day, people rely on cash and that are both informal, insecure, risky, and expensive tools to manage their financial lives. They borrow cash from loan sharks, save under mattresses, and send money across the country by bus. Meanwhile, in wealthy countries, we pay utility bills from the couch of a touch of a button, have access to mortgages, 401k and retirement payments that come automatically out of our paychecks, and other complex financial instruments that are surprisingly built for the way we live. Tools like mobile money have emerged because the challenges for the banking market to serve the poor make it uneconomical for the size transactions that poor people want to do. Yet new tools make it possible to make it profitable for both suppliers and providers to offer these services, services that have the ability to transform lives and empower people to buffer themselves against the risks they face and to take advantage of opportunities. Some of the biggest players that can empower these networks are governments, the private sector, and the development community, and they have the potential to ignite this transformation. And we're pleased that the Better Than Cash Alliance incorporates all of these sectors as the starting point of real transformation. Better Than Cash is an alliance of governments, major donors, and large businesses who believe that there is real value in creating economic, financial infrastructure that the world's poor can not only use but have access to day in and day out when they need it, when they have emergencies, when they need to take advantage of opportunities. Shifting to digital payments generates a wide range of benefits, from improved transparency to gains in efficiency to significant cost savings. But beyond the benefits they reap for themselves, Better Than Cash members have the power to fundamentally transform the economics of delivering financial services to the poor, allowing them to save, allowing them to send kids to school, allowing them to save when they need money for fertilizer for the next season, and pay for malaria medicine. We, the funders and committed organizations, believe that while cash will most likely have a role in developing economies for many years to come, connecting poor people to a digital payment system can help them build financial security and live healthy and productive lives. The road ahead is not easy. The challenges will be real, but the benefits on the ground in villages around the world have the power to radically transform lives and give people control over their future in ways that they don't have right now. So thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce this alliance, and thank you to all of you who took out the first steps to make it a reality.
I think you should. Her Royal Highness, Princess Máxima of the Netherlands, Honorable Minister, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the UN Capital Development Fund is truly honored to have been invited by the founders to contribute to the vision of the Better Than Cash Alliance. UNCDF will host the Secretariat, and in this role, we do hope to translate the vision of shifting to digital payments into a firm reality. We believe that we are uniquely positioned to play this role, mainly because of our mandate within the UN system of advancing financial inclusion, with a focus both at the policy and the retail level. Shifting to electronic distribution for social benefits, humanitarian aid, or payroll payments can be a powerful on-ramp for financial inclusion for those who are currently excluded from the formal financial system. It will also help poor people build savings and increase their financial security. The other benefits include improved transparency, gains in efficiency, and significant cost savings. However compelling the shift is, there is practical experience from countries that show that attention is much needed at the operational and technical details if these benefits have to be fully captured. The Better Than Cash Alliance will provide leadership, resources, and technical assistance to its members. In this respect, the role of the advisory and program management committees will be invaluable. I would like to thank and congratulate the committee members and recognize those who are among us this afternoon. Could I ask them kindly to stand up so we can recognize them, committee members? In addition to raising awareness of the benefits of replacing physical cash with electronic payments, the Better Than Cash Alliance will facilitate the transition for governments, the development community, and the private sector. The role of the alliance will be threefold. First, it will advocate for organizations to commit to transition their transactions from cash to electronic forms. Second, it will provide policy, technical, and financial assistance to implement the most effective approach to local market conditions. And thirdly, it will develop cutting-edge research products, best practices, and case studies to help drive the effective shift from cash to electronic payment at the global level. Those who wish to join the alliance are welcome, and they will have to sign on to the better than cash principles. There are two ways of joining the alliance. First one, either as a program partner, making commitment to transition payment from cash to electronic, and the second one as a funding partner, financially supporting the mission and the work of the alliance. As we celebrate this afternoon the launch of the Better Than Cash Alliance, we also invite you all to consider how you and/or your organization might help accelerate the shift from cash to electronic payments. We are looking forward to welcoming you as full-fledged members of the Alliance in the very near future, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rodger and Christine. Please welcome Matt Bannick, who's the managing partner of the Omidyar network, and Matt will introduce the first of our commitments to the Alliance.
Thank you, Frank. In addition to the leadership from the governments of the Philippines, Peru, and Kenya, the Department of Social Prosperity of the government of Colombia has signed the Better Than Cash principles, making a formal commitment to transition to electronic distribution. Now, Mariana Escobar of the Department of Social Welfare was unable to travel to New York, but was able to record a video message outlining Colombia's commitment. So please roll the video.
Hello to everyone, my name is Mariana Escobar, Deputy Director of the Department for Social Prosperity. The Colombian government created last year the sector of social inclusion and reconciliation. This sector is aimed at overcoming extreme poverty and repairing the victims of the internal conflict in an integral fashion. In this framework, the Department for Social Prosperity, which I represent today, was created along with 5 other institutions in charge of advancing in these very big objectives. In this context, the process of financial inclusion of millions of people in extreme poverty has become a central matter for the Colombian government.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Mariana. One of our first conversation today will center on how governments can lead a shift and not a drift in converting cash to electronic payments. And please welcome Matthew Bishop, who is the U.S. Bureau Chief for the Economist, and he will moderate the panel. Matthew?
If the panelists would join me up here on stage, that would be great. It's great to be here this afternoon and to first of all introduce Princess Máxima of the Netherlands. I first got to know Princess Máxima serving together with her on the advisors group to the United Nations International Year of Microcredit in 2005. And in my job I meet all sorts of interesting people, but she was my first princess and I wasn't quite sure what to expect, and it was great to discover that she's tremendous fun and a rebel at heart, as well as having as well as having 2 things that were very important. One being that she made it very clear that she was a banker who knew about banking, having served on Wall Street before becoming a princess. And secondly, that she had a really deep passion for financial services for the poor and creating an inclusive financial system. And so I just want to ask you if you'd give us a few minutes of remarks on the Better Than Cash Alliance and what it needs to do before we go into the panel discussion.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Matthew. Maybe we could say, what do I do apart of being a princess? I happen to be the United Nations Secretary General Special Advocate for Financial Inclusion for Development, and that has come from a series of work that I've also been doing together with Mr. Bishop, also the United Nations Advisory Group on access to finance. Been doing a lot of work in different countries. I also work together with G20. I'm an honorary patron of the G20 Financial Inclusion Arm, and in that we have had a lot of commitments from several countries in order to make financial inclusion a reality. So it's a lot more than just microcredits, it's financial inclusion. And this is where I actually come here, and I'm present at this launching of Better Than Cash. And let me first tell you that how thrilled I am that this is happening. Why? Because this is really going to be very key to actually make financial inclusion a reality. Why is it so important? You know, let's talk about the individuals. I think that Mr. Rees actually touched upon it. Facilitate sending and receiving cash is not something we have to take very lightly. Not only that, but making payments is such an important thing. I visited Tanzania, and I tend to give this example, and I will repeat it again because I think it's so telling. This teacher had to leave school for 2 weeks just to get a payment, 2 weeks. And it cost sometimes the trip more than she would actually get in salary payments. And this multiplied by all the teachers in Tanzania, and that tells you, I mean, the need of actually having a good payment system, and what does it mean for an individual, and also for the people that depend on that individual to actually have this type of non-cash payment systems. Businesses. Basically, we also do a lot of SME finance and financial inclusion. Well, the biggest issue is the cost of doing business. How many times you've actually seen micro-entrepreneurs coming with a stack of cash, and that is extremely costly to maintain and to carry around. Of course, macroeconomically, if business do better, of course, macroeconomically the country will do better. But also government, I think there was a lot of mention of increasing transparency, and of course, having their services and cash transfers done much cheaper. But what I also think is very, very important to be much more targeted. One of the things I've seen is a lot of the cash transfers being paid, sometimes they didn't get to the right person. And that is also extremely important, and something like this program, Better Than Cash, is really going to help to really target the people that we want to give the subsidies or the conditional cash transfers to. I'm going to Nigeria in 2 or 3 weeks, and we're going to be launching the national platform and national program for financial inclusion. And one of the issues why the government is so interested in it is that they spend $1 billion per year printing, handling, and transporting money, cash. So imagine their interest in actually having some type of Better Than Cash programs in their own countries. So I think this is extremely important. I mean, these are all the benefits, you know, from individual level, business level, macro, and government level. But how do we get there? Apart from all the technical assistance and capacity that UNCDF was talking about, we need political leadership. Without political leadership, we won't really be able to make it. And that's why I'm so happy that 3 colleagues here in the panel are present, because it basically shows that the interest of the government has to be there. But once we have the interest of the government there and the political leadership to really take this to fruition, let us not forget about partnership and coordination. You won't be able to do this alone. You need the private sector. You need a variety of private sector, not only the mobile phone operators, not only the financial sector, a variety of private sector providers. The other issue is not only we have sort of several types of ministries represented here, but the whole array of ministries from agriculture, social affairs, economic, finance, education, health provision, etc., if we're really going to make this happen. And I will come back to this point later on. The other issue that we've been working very heavily upon the last years is data. If we're going to basically target our actions properly, we will need the data to actually remind us where are we doing properly and where we're not doing properly, where we'll have to every year still keep on looking at, how do you define and design your actions. The IMF has actually launched the Financial Access Survey, which actually has done a very good job in getting the supply data on financial inclusion. But also the World Bank has actually done, with the help of the Gates Foundation, a very good demand-side data. But we need to do more, and certainly when we talk about mobile phone banking, we will be able to actually have on-time data gathering that I think one shouldn't be forgetting when you're actually talking about this project. But do we stop here? It's just about replacing cash. And I was really very pleased to hear savings around. Like any financial services, this will also be a means to an end. I mean, I do not become better by just making a transfer, on my mobile phone. It's actually, what does it lead me to? And savings, we know that any country, the Netherlands, Singapore, has actually really seen increases and equitative development, economic development with the increase of savings. And I would like to know about your plans for the vision of Kenya 2030 by increasing savings to 30% of the GDP. And I think, and I would like to know how you twin these increase or this policy with this Better Than Cash project, because I think that's something we should keep in mind, and learn from examples like Kenya. The informal economy. How can we use this possibility to actually get thousands and millions of enterprises and people that are operating only in the informal economy to actually get into the formal economy? This could be really transformational. I mean, I really would like to stress upon this. I mean, getting people into the formal economy is extremely important. Of course, helping accountability and transparency of governments. And I think, Mr. Abad, you have years of experience on this issue, and I think that this issue of Better Than Cash could actually help your transparency and accountability of governments. But also, how do we tailor these e-payments and technology to have a greater social impact? I mean, to promote education, to improve health provision. The state of Bihar in India is paying mothers-to-be, $30 to actually have the children at the hospitals. And they do that by paying by the mobile phones. This is already great. But what about sending these mothers another text message saying, your kid has to get the next vaccination? And when you do it, I'm going to send you the $5 to cover the cost of vaccination. What about the ladies that actually go out to fetch water, and they have to pay for that water, and they do it on the mobile phones? So in that sense, partnerships and coordination will be extremely, extremely important to really have the social impact we desire with this type of programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased that this first panel is really dealing with government and what government can do to make this cashless society possible, because I think the technology that we've seen develop over the last few years has really advanced in leaps and bounds, whereas I think the biggest thing now holding back in many countries what is possible are governments, and both the telecom sector and the banking sector have historically in many countries been heavily regulated in ways that aren't pro-poor. And so I'm very excited that we have three representatives here of governments that are really tackling this problem and trying to create the right supportive regulatory ecosystem. And so I want to introduce on the far end, next to Princess Máxima, is Carolina Trivelli, who's Minister for Development and Social Inclusion in Peru. Then Florencio Abad, Budget Secretary, Department of Budget and Management of the Philippines. And immediately next to me, Dr. Geoffrey Mwau, Economic Secretary of the Ministry of Finance in Kenya. I want to start with you, Mr. Abad. One of the examples I vividly remember from when we were on the advisors board for the microcredit year was hearing from a Philippines member that there was many poor people in the Philippines actually had to give their money, paid to give their money to some guys on motorbikes who would take the money away at night and bring it back the following morning. And it just brought home to us how saving systems are so primitive and so necessary in much of the world, and electronic cash can solve this. So what was it that has prompted your government to sign up to the Better Than Cash Alliance and the principles?
Thank you, Martin. First of all, I'm happy to be back here at the Ford Foundation. I was a Ford Foundation grantee at the Kennedy School. The Aquino administration came to power rather unprecedentedly, people demanding change. And there were basically two issues that people wanted the new president to deal with, the widespread, deeply rooted problem of poverty, and of course the problem of corruption in government. When we took over government almost 3 years ago, we had some rather startling discoveries. For example, about almost 700,000 of our teachers were not getting their social insurance benefits because of failure of the Department of Education to remit the teachers' premium payments. And this has gone on for more than 10 years until we dealt with it last year. I also discovered, for example, that in the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we had no roster of our uniform and non-uniform employees. And when I asked why we didn't have one, they raised of course, the excuse of its national security, and so nobody should know. And there was wide talk in the community that about 20% of the payroll were actually ghost soldiers, but we had no way of knowing. In fact, even pension payments was a serious matter for the police and the military, because there was really no record of who was receiving pension, and pension payments were given either by cash or by check. So we were almost at a dead end. And of course, the president said that unless we find out, there's no way that we could deal with this problem. So my first instinct was to stop all payments and force the armed forces and the police to come out with the roster, which we managed to do just last year, because I held 20% of the payroll of the armed forces and said, if you don't agree on how we can put together the roster, then there's no way you can get the payroll. And eventually, last year we put it together, and about 14% of those in the payroll were actually should not be receiving payroll. And just last week, I had the tussle with the police because we made it mandatory together with the Secretary of Interior that they can only start receiving their pension payments via the ATM. But they refused. They even had demonstrations in my office saying, "You're denying us our pension payments." I said, "But you have to receive your pension payments via the ATM," because there were retirees who were 106 years old and 88 years old. And I couldn't believe that people would last up to this age. So that this is really what prompted us to begin. Well, the Armed Forces of the Philippines were issuing disbursements via cash advances. About 46% of disbursements were cash advances. And we all know that cash advances, you don't know where they come from, and you wouldn't know where they would go. So these are the things that motivated us to pursue ways by which we can promote greater transparency and accountability on the part of people in government. Of course, the other mandate was, make sure that the benefits of good governance are immediately, directly, and substantially felt by the poor, because we are in a transition, and of course, while there's a lot of expectations that things will be good, the poor want the benefits to come right away. Yeah. And one of the things that the president thought should be implemented immediately was the conditional cash transfer program, and we were inspired by the experience in Brazil and in Mexico about this. So when we started to do this, of course, the first question we had to ask is, who are the poor that we need to give cash disbursements to? And that led to the need to come out with the National Household Targeting Survey. Yeah. And for the first time in our history, the poor had names and addresses, which we never had before. And then we started with this program. There were about initial 800,000 beneficiaries, but the president said, you know, that's too small. I want by the end of my term, those 5.2 million indigent households should be receiving their cash subsidies. And you know, the World Bank office in Manila told us, there's no way that you can do that in 5 years. But actually, technology intervened, and next year, we will be benefiting about 3.8 million indigent households with a budget of about 44 billion pesos. You know.
Brilliant. Well, that's great. So another memory from 2005 was visiting the Vodafone Foundation and hearing about this little pilot scheme they had in Kenya that had done terribly well, but they weren't sure that they were going to take it further forward because they didn't want to become a bank. They were a phone company, and DFID that had helped fund it was not sure it was going to increase the funding. So somewhere out of that became Safaricom and became M-Pesa and became this sort of remarkable story of mobile money in Kenya. And I'd like to ask you, Dr. Mwau, what were the barriers you had to overcome that have enabled mobile money, cashless money to flourish in Kenya?
Thank you, Matthew. The first major barrier really was resistance to creating the policy environment where the mobile money platform can function efficiently and effectively and in a reliable manner. That required us to reform the ICT sector, our telecom sector, and there was major resistance for fear of loss of jobs or vested interests. And for a long time, we were doing piecemeal reforms. But then around mid-2000, we got champions in the name of the Minister for Information and the PS for Information, and they provided the political leadership that the princess has talked about. In fact, one of the champions is standing there in front of us. So with that, we were able to reform the sector and get it to a competitive level where, since then, it costs less to call from Kenya to the United States than it costs to call from here. Now, that provided the platform for cheap and efficient platform for transferring money. Because again here, the bottom line is lowering the transaction costs. So when we broke that barrier, we were able now to provide a situation where even the very poor can participate in this mobile money transfer. Of course, infrastructure is key. Again, reliable and efficient infrastructure in the name of fiber optic technology. We invested in that. It was a barrier in the sense that without it, again, we could not have gotten where we are. And initially, the private sector is not really ready to get into this until they feel comfortable that the government is serious. So we took the leadership again through the minister and SPS. And we invested in the inland, a whole network of fiber optic, and also getting it from United Arab Emirates. So again, that was a barrier. Also, another barrier was the transparency that comes with this mobile money, electronic money transfer. Again, of course, you have heard many speakers talk about the transparency that it brings. Many people who want to benefit from the system in a illegal way don't want that, so they resist that. Another resistance or barrier was that Kenyans, even though they were used to mobile telephones, they were not really fully comfortable with a mobile money transfer because you're putting your money now, it's no longer just some little shillings here for telephone calls. But again here, two things happened. One, the company, the leader in mobile money transfer, came very early with a very effective promotional campaign that was tailored to convincing Kenyans that it is an effective tool. But also, in addition to that, the government came with a strategy where we actually took an audit of the whole money transfer platform, and we put it in the paper and clearly underlined that it is efficient and we can give it a clean bill of health. In fact, I wrote that piece that we put in the paper. And with those, actually, the public got very convinced that it's a good and reliable system. We also had resistance from the banks because they felt that this is competition that was actually, in a sense, unexpected, even though the players in that sector were not even bankable. They were not, they didn't have a bank account and they could not even get some, but the banks were actually worried about that. But again, we encourage them to think positively. In fact, to think of it as something that they can partner with. And today, we have a situation where now the banks actually, you can move money from your bank account to the M-Pesa account and back and forth. So actually now many banks have taken up that, and it's enhanced our financial intermediation, because now you can open an account in the bank and move money back and forth. So it has turned out to be exactly what we told the banks, that they should look at it positively. So those are some of the main barriers, but I think the princess asked about, or talked about savings. Just to give you an example of what this mobile money transfer can do, or electronic money transfer. Right now we have a system where we have informal players in the artisans in Nairobi. I think most of you have been to Nairobi. You have seen our informal sector is large. They are actually now saving. They have a pension scheme that was developed by the Retirement Benefits Authority. We call it a Mwau pension scheme. Mwau is like, in Kiswahili, is 20 shillings. They commit to save 100 shillings a week, and they transfer that using mobile money transfer. And it has grown up to a point where it has caught the attention of the fund managers, because it is huge. It is the fastest growing pension scheme. These are people who hitherto would not even, you would not even have thought that they would save, but now they are saving. And we're looking at many other opportunities like that to encourage savings at that level, where before we never thought we could do. And this is all because of the platform that is efficient and reliable. So stop there. Thank you.
Just one very brief follow-up question. You're obviously approached by people from lots of other governments asking for advice on how to do this. What do you think is the most common mistake that governments make when they try and encourage the shift to cash, to electronic cash?
I think one of the key things that we make sure we don't do is to overregulate the sector. Like especially at that point where everybody was saying that it's not safe, you need to be sure that the money is safe. As long as we were sure that with the central bank, this was really the central bank doing this, we were sure that all the risks are taken care of. And we actually did an audit and determined that. Then the rest was left to the private sector to operate. So one of the key messages is don't overregulate. But at the same time, ensure that the system, the infrastructure is efficient, reliable, and no major breakdowns all the time.
So Minister Trivelli, we've already heard that government payments can be a major driver of adoption of electronic cash. You've had some experience in Peru of that. Can you tell us what you've learned so far?
Yes, thank you. At the beginning, when we began dealing with the idea of helping the extreme poor to...
Is the mic on? Or do you...
That's easier. In Peru, we began with this idea of improving financial services for the poor, because Peru is a very microfinancial country, and it has a very good regulation and a very strong microfinancial sector. But this microfinancial sector was not attending really the extreme poor. And we thought that based on these conditions, the government needs to do something. So we began working with the conditional cash transfer programs, and we made first a very small pilot providing savings account to the recipients of the conditional cash transfer program. And we learned a lot. A lot of these extreme poor women save small amount of money, but that changed significantly their lives and their children's life. So when this new government came into power a year ago and created this new ministry, the Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion, they gave us one major task: provide full services for citizenships. And all these services must be quality services, especially for the extreme poor. So what we decide is, at first, everybody, not anymore pilots, everybody will have a savings account to receive all these payments, all the transfers payment from any social program. And that allowed a lot of transparency, diminishes the cost. But we still face a lot of limitations. We have savings accounts for everybody. These are free of charge. They have unlimited transactions that you could make, but we don't have enough branches all around the country. And most of the extreme poor people live really far away. So there's a huge space to innovate and to improve our payment systems to allow these people to take the benefit of having the savings account, of having this microfinancial sector that provides credit, microinsurance, and other services for people that lives near a bank branch or have a branchless banking agent. But in the most rural areas, imagine in the middle of the Amazon jungle, if you have to travel like 7 days to reach the bank branch, you have a problem. But you have a cell phone. Yeah. And you have a lot of other options to improve this payment system. So we are building step by step. Now we have the savings account. We have all these people already connected, and we make the deposits in those savings accounts. But we need to support these people to make more efficient use of this savings account and to access this whole set of financial products they have access to. And we also need to work from the other side at the same time, providing financial education and developing the financial capabilities of these people to make them make the right decision. You know, choose if you want to use your cell phone, or you want to travel, or you want to leave or take all your money out of the savings account.
Well, I have hundreds of questions I'd love to ask, and I'm sure you all do as well, but unfortunately our time is pretty much up on this panel, so I just wanted to give Princess Máxima the chance for one last sort of wrap-up comment about what you've heard, and over to you.
No, I think, well, first of all, of course, Colombia is not present here today, but I think these 4 countries are going to be a great start to actually lead the path for many, many other countries to follow. And I think what would be extremely important, I know your health insurance system pretty well in the Philippines. I work in a lot of financial literacy issues in Peru with the superintendencia, and definitely, as you just said, Ms. Mwau, you know, all the process you've been doing to get into mobile banking. I think it's very important that you document also your examples and your experiences to actually teach other countries that are going to follow the same path. I mean, you cannot sort of, you know, it's not one-to-one. Every country is going to be different, but it's extremely important that actually countries learn from your own experiences and the way you also work with private sector and the issues that have been important to really make it a reality. So I thank you very much, and I really congratulate all the funders for making this a reality. I think it's a great step forward.
Yeah, and I think it's terrific that we have, you know, Latin America, Asia, and Africa all represented here, and hopefully each of these countries will become models for the rest of the world, maybe even models for the rich world as well as the developed world in terms of how you can actually drive this new technology into place and really make it useful to everybody. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you.
So thank you, Matthew, and thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts on this really exciting initiative. Today you'll continue to hear how much opportunity there is for the development community to create lasting benefits for people and communities through electronic payments. In addition to commitments from the United Nations Development Program and USAID, both of whom you will hear from this afternoon, I'm honored now to introduce Neal Keny-Guyer, who's the CEO of Mercy Corp. and he's going to talk about their new commitment to transition to electronic payments. Neal?
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. It's that time we need a little energy, right? I was on a panel before coming here on risk insurance and now on, payment systems. It's hard to make this stuff sound exciting, isn't it? I mean, but this is really transformational. It has the potential to offer some of the biggest breakthroughs in development that our community has seen maybe since the invention of the vaccines, because it empowers individuals. It improves the quality of their lives. It puts power back in their hands and some of the most marginalized people. So that's why at Mercy Corps, with so many of our colleagues and partners and funders, we're pleased to add our enthusiastic endorsement to the Better Than Cash Alliance, to thank all the founding partners, and to say that for us, it's not just recognizing the limitations of cash that's been talked about. It's really seeing that by pursuing better than cash initiatives, we can catalyze an ecosystem that promotes financial inclusion and that offers so many other possibilities as well. And that's why we at Mercy Corps, are really proud to have launched Bank Andara in Indonesia and Andara Link with our Gates Foundation friends and IFC and other development banks. And because this is creating a digital link for more than 700 microfinance institutions now, soon going to 2,000, representing millions of transactions better than cash that we can promote. That's why we were really proud to turn crisis into opportunity in Haiti with other friends here and develop mobile wallets in some of the toughest environments with our USAID friends. That's why we're working really hard with the Swiss Development Corporation to bundle agricultural information, link it to financial services, test that in Asia and Africa, and that offers, again, the promise to reach hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers. And that's why, with ourselves, we're pioneering our own digital toolbox so that when we go into any emergency, any crisis in the world, where it's appropriate, all of our transactions are going to be through electronic systems where that's appropriate. So we're proud to join this alliance, and we pledge, as I said, to use, where appropriate, all of our humanitarian efforts through digital and electronic platforms to double down on testing these innovations and these products, because we need to bring innovation. We know that. We need to kind of test last mile business models. We know governments have got to get the regulations right and that it takes government policy to scale. But we've got to work really hard to iterate and to test around the product and service innovations and the business models. And then finally, we pledge with everything to join all of you in a true spirit of partnership so that at the end of the day, we can say that it's not only better than cash, but we've helped bring about a world that has more dignity and more empowerment for those for whom all of our institutions and organizations exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neal, for your commitment, for your thoughtfulness, your innovation, and most of all, your energy at 5 p.m. on a Monday evening. So thank you very much. A very exciting set of commitments. Now, before introducing the next speaker, the Better Than Cash Alliance would like to recognize Concern Worldwide for being an early committing organization and bringing innovative approaches to electronic payments into their programming. Tom Arnold, CEO of Concern Worldwide, could you please stand up? There he is. So hopefully you're drafting on Neal's energy there. And it is contagious. Now, please welcome Ertharin Cousin, who's the Executive Director of the World Food Program, and he's going to talk about their membership with the Better Than Cash Alliance. Oh, I'm sorry, Ertharin. Thank you. Will you still come talk to me?
I was going to say thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm not so sure now. Following on my colleague here from Mercy Corps and our good partner, I feel like I need to say something really, really energizing, or you guys are going to walk out on me. Let me, first of all, thank you. Thank you for a packed room talking about a solution that is going to change lives around the communities that we serve. So you're sitting here at 5 o'clock and you are energized, because you know that what we have the opportunity to do through this partnership is not just about what we're talking about in the room, but more importantly, it's about the lives that we will change in the communities that we serve. I want to thank Rajiv Shah. Raj is not here, so I can take lots of liberties because he's not here yet, and for inviting and encouraging the World Food Program to participate in this partnership as an early innovator. Raj and I are always talking about what kind of innovations can we together implement through the work of the World Food Program, through our NGO partners like Mercy Corps, like CARE, like Concern, around the world to make a difference in a different way. Because the one thing we know is if we do what we've always done, we'll get what we always got, and we need something more. And now this kind of an alliance gives us the opportunity to drive for that something more. WFP's participation in this partnership is an easy one. We've moved from food aid to food assistance. And we recognize that we need particular new tools to help us with food assistance. But when we talk about the Better Than Cash Alliance, when we talk about the electronic payment programs, we know that for WFP, that's a very particular type of program that we bring. We don't do what UNDP and some Mercy Corps and others do with providing income support to those that we serve. We are invested in by our donors for very particular mandate to meet food assistance needs. But what this new electronic tool does is gives us a different platform to ensure that those that we target that require our support, that we can now give them the benefit of the electronic system to support their access to food. It also gives us a tool that we can build other benefits upon, which we are now doing in different programs around the world. So we're committed to this partnership. We're committed to the alliance because we know that it will make a difference. In Kenya, WFP, through our asset creation activities, is operating in marginal agricultural areas using retail outlets contracted by local financial institutions to process client transactions. In Syria, Iraqi refugees receive electronic vouchers redeemable for specific food commodities at participating retailers, and electronic vouchers are being introduced for Syrian refugees in Turkey. In the West Bank, electronic vouchers allow beneficiaries to redeem commodities from local shops using swipe cards. I can go on and on, but they're holding up a sign that tells me to wrap it up, so I will. So in conclusion, we're a partner, but not in name only. We're a partner to achieve the goals that an alliance of the strong entities that are listed, but most importantly of the partners who are implementing these tools on the ground can achieve for the benefit of those we serve. We look forward to celebrating in short order the successes that we'll have in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Neal and Ertharin, for your commitments. We're now going to turn to our second panel, which shifts the focus from what governments can do in specific countries to what the private sector and the development community can do to convert cash to electronic and digital payments across boundaries. So let me bring back Rodger Voorhies, who's going to moderate the second panel.
Can you hear me? There we go. So if I could ask the panelists to come up and we can get settled. I'm particularly excited to be here today to have this panel. I spent a big piece of my career in Africa, in Malawi, in Zambia, and some of the other countries in that part of the world. And I still remember us wrestling with some of you in the room about how we would switch from food aid or work for food to financial payments, to conditional cash transfers. And then from there, how we would actually digitize it. And we did it the first time actually with Concern Worldwide in Malawi, almost a decade ago, I guess now. And we had all these people evaluated, and the thing that stood out was there were a lot of mistakes made, a lot of problems we had with it. But it had real powerful effect, both to empower people on the ground, money multiplier effect in the villages where it went, as well as a way to bring people into inclusion. So I'm really glad that you're also here at this point today, so thanks. I was going to start out by introducing Helen Clark. So when she comes in, we will. So we'll just give her a couple more minutes. I think here she comes now. So we're getting set. Let me go ahead and introduce the panelists while we're here, and that way we can go right into it after Helen gives her opening remarks. So to my right, I have Helene Gayle, Dr. Helene Gayle, the CEO of CARE. And next is Doug Michelman, Global Head of Corporate Relations to Visa. And next to Doug is Francesco Vanni Darkirafi, who is the CEO of Transaction Services for Citi. Helen. Hi, welcome. So it's my pleasure to introduce Helen Clark. I'm sure she needs no introduction here. Helen has made a substantial impact in the lives of people around the world, not only in her native New Zealand, where she was held the position of Prime Minister for 9 years, but also internationally as the Administrator of the United Nations Development Program and Chair of the United Nations Development Group. Today, Helen works with a range of private and public partners to foster social and political change, facilitate nation building, and promote the welfare of households, including increased access to financial services. In her opening remarks, Helen will introduce the next panel dedicated to the private sector, multilateral and non-government organizations. Thanks, Helen. Thanks for coming and being with us today.
Thank you. Well, it's all about partnerships is the way that I'll open. And I think for me to best talk about better than cash and how you reach the poorest people, it's good to talk about what I saw myself of a very, very exciting initiative in Haiti, where, as you know, it's taken a long time to rebuild the houses of people whose homes were destroyed in the devastating events of some 2 years ago. So an idea was devised, UNDP, working with partners, community sector, private sector, government, people who facilitate financial services, to get the money for rebuilding in approved grants, not in cash to the person who was going to receive it for their home, but for that person to take it to an approved retailer who would sell them approved products and be accountable for that. And it was associated with a training course for self-build so that what was being built was appropriate. And when I visited it and met people who'd already received grants from this and seen the benefits of it, they were so happy because they were getting their house again. But I was very, very impressed by the partnerships. I'm very, very impressed by the goodwill of the private sector in helping design something that would really function. Community sector in helping with aspects, particularly the training of the self-build. And it was a good example to me of seeing's believing. You could see all these different parts of a puzzle coming together. So I really wanted to underline the partnership aspect. For me, I can see the platforms of ICT broadband created by the private sector really enabling poor people in many countries now to leapfrog generations of services and technologies through the possibilities of mobile banking. I think it's extremely exciting. Many people in this room know far more about it than I do, but I know how hard it has been for poor people to access bank accounts, have their money safely stored, and I just think the technology possibilities now are extremely exciting. So role for the private sector, role for the multilaterals, role for the community sector, result individual empowerment and human development, and that's what we're in the business for. Thank you.
And thanks very much. Let me start with Francesco from Citi. We know that Citi has recently launched a Mobile Money Alliance with USAID to help support local mobile money platforms, and that this rollout will be across many of your markets. How do you adapt your products, services, marketing, or programs to the economies of the less developed, where both individuals and individual users may have had no experience with electronic banking or even many times formal banking products?
No, not fast enough, but I guess I represent the practitioner at Citi on the institutional side of the business. To give you an idea, we move $3 trillion a day through our platforms, 100 countries, a global platform on top of that. And what we've done in the last 12 months is enable our clients to access our global platform through mobile devices. And to our greatest surprise, we launched it in January, and by September we crossed the $10 billion mark of flows that have been initiated through mobile devices. And 95% of the flows were in the developing markets. So I think, I always say that necessity is the mother of all inventions, and I think we have in Africa just discussed an example of when you look at banking penetration is around 20% on average. I really don't have the latest details for Kenya, but mobile penetration is 75% and growing quickly. There are 5 billion mobile devices today around the globe. So I think that better than cash is digital money, and when you put digital money together with store value cards or plastic, together you create digital wallets, and then you can start talking not only about transactional activity, but saving activity. So everything I do for my big multinational clients, for the public sector, is about transparency, visibility of your flows. When you do that, you can control at the center, and therefore you can do everything more efficiently. And all those topics were discussed by the people that spoke before me. So I think we're very much aligned. And what we want to be is an accelerator. I think we all understand the importance. We don't, in my business, reach the individual, but what we can do with our network, our platforms, and our digital journey is act as an enabler, a facilitator, and support progress, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's very interesting to hear. And Doug, obviously Visa has a lot of transactions as well. And you and as your organization have helped governments in Mexico, Dominican Republic, and Pakistan, as well as others, transition social benefits and humanitarian aid to electronic distribution. So what are some of the lessons that you've been learning around the globe? And how's your partnerships and you and your partners work together to make this transition?
Thank you, Roger. We were created 50 years ago to displace cash. So, and our mission for 50 years has been to be the best way to pay and be paid. But this year we're in the process of updating that mission to be the best way to pay and be paid for everyone, everywhere, which really, I think, signifies our commitment to the Better Than Cash Alliance and this movement. We believe strongly in financial inclusion, and it's in that spirit that we've done these many implementations around the world, and we learn from everyone, and everyone is locally tailored, but there are several principles and themes that seem to echo across all of them, and you'll hear me echoing other things we've heard today. And it takes a village is the first one. It is an ecosystem. It requires government leadership. It requires participation by banks, by NGOs, by networks like ourselves, and by the interest of the community to get on board. Nobody can do this by themselves. It takes everybody. Second is you have to deliver a service that engenders trust. Without trust, it's nothing. And that means the system and the payments and the processing, it has to be reliable, secure, and convenient. It has to be easy to use. We've learned that you have to deliver value at scale. So if governments are going to do this and they want to make it successful and they want to accelerate, they need to do it big, because it's all about getting many people to using it and incenting merchants and other people to accept electronic payments. And so the more people who are using electronic payments through government disbursements, the more places will accept those payments. And it's a never-ending and virtuous cycle. It's about economics. We have to make it economically attractive for everybody to participate, to have incent merchants, to incent agents, to incent consumers to use electronic payments. And finally, it requires education. We've talked about that. This is a whole population of new users who are using electronic payments. We need to teach them about the benefits, teach them how to use it, and then teach them how to use it responsibly with financial literacy education. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks very much. Aline Kerr is coming in from the opposite direction, working with some of the poorest women in the whole world. And you have all, as an organization, have done some really innovative things of digitizing and looking how to digitize transactions to some of the poorest women in the world in Africa. And I want to know, what advice would you give us, or what would you tell similar stakeholders who are trying to make this transition in a significant way, especially when they're trying to reach really rural, disenfranchised folks who may have never had any kind of formal access before now?
Yeah, thanks. And let me just add my thanks and enthusiasm. I won't do it quite like my colleague Neal. He's from Texas. I'm from Buffalo. We do it differently. But I'm just as exuberant and excited about this. This is really, and as I look around the room and see everybody who's here, it's just, it really is heartwarming and incredibly gratifying to be at this stage. And it, you know, it is really, I think, one of the most transformational advances that we have seen in so long. And I think it's incredible for a lot of different reasons. You know, as you said, the people who we serve and work with are the very, very poor, people who live on oftentimes less than $1 a day, some less than 50 cents a day. So we're talking about people for whom having savings and cash is really critical to really being able to build up the kind of assets that make a difference in their lives. And so we've been working, as an example, in a project called Access Africa, where poor, rural, mainly women, save pennies together in a group process, and then are able to take those savings and give small loans to each other, charge interest, and be able to start small businesses, grow their assets, but do it in a group way. Well, they do that with a lockbox. And as their savings grow and as their assets grow, continuing to keep things in a lockbox, even in a small community where they have a lot of trust, you know, starts to take on some risk and liability. They're now, these same communities are now able, through mobile money, to start saving in financial institutions. So it gives the chance for those who are unbanked, as they begin to gather assets, to actually join the formal banking system. So it's a huge leap for the populations in which we work. And it's really made a big difference in the ability to have the kind of dignity and pride that so many people have talked about, that we all know from our days of saving pennies in little piggy banks and then ultimately going to a bank and being able to have a savings account. So it's that same sort of sense of dignity. But it's also helping our own staff. In many places that we work, where we serve very, very rural populations, people have had to take large wads of money to do transactions in the places in which we work. So we're now able to give a different sense of safety to our own staff, as we've actually incorporated the use of mobile money in our own operations. So we're doing it in our programs. It's providing a huge advance in our programs. We're doing it with our within our own operations, and it's making a big difference. And I think, you know, what you started with, Helen, the whole notion of partnership is another aspect and another way in which I think it's moving all of us further. You know, we're learning to talk each other's language. I remember, Doug, we had a discussion about, you know, this term, you know, we talk about financial inclusion. In the banking sector, you talk about growing your commercial base. you know, it's the same thing, but it's really how do we talk about this in a way that really looks at how do we have a real sense of shared values and a shared objectives. And so, you know, I think it's hugely transformative in terms of the way we're building partnerships, the way we're learning to work together, and I think it's the kind of partnerships that's going to really help to energize our field overall, not just for this type of activity, but I think it really sets a platform for moving forward in different kinds of partnerships that I think we've had the opportunity to have in the past. So we just can't say enough about how exciting it is. That said, it's not easy, and we know that trying to make anything like this work when we're bringing the different communities together means that we've got to know that this is for the long haul, that we will make mistakes, we will have to keep learning, but learning as we go along, recognizing that we're really onto something, that we're changing lives.
Thanks very much. Helen, I wonder if you would close us out. I mean, in your role, you have all kinds of partnerships, both with the private sector, the public sector, the NGO sector. And yet, while we have a big room today with all of you here supporting this, it's not everyone of the stakeholders who is on board. So I just wondered if you either would close us out on your thoughts about what you heard today or how we would move forward in this area.
Well, I think for those of us in the practical business of making these transfers, the possibilities with mobile banking and digital services are a godsend, because as Gayle says, you worry about those truckloads of money. This has just got to be better. So I think the more we can talk about the practical examples of how we see it working, how it's succeeding, we'll get others to the table. You know, when I was Prime Minister of my country, we looked at the problem of the Pacific migrants who were earning money in New Zealand but sending it back home to the Pacific. Often the transfer companies were clipping the ticket by up to 24% of the value of the remittance. This was deeply wrong. And through some of the technologies we're now talking about as quite routine and a change in regulations, we were able to get that cost right down. So maybe the only people who aren't happy are the ones who used to clip the ticket to 24%, but everyone else who's getting the money, the local market, where people have got more to spend as a result, are so much better off. So I think it spread the word, and for those of us who are engaged, just keep looking at opportunities to do this. I remember a session we had with Princess Máxima at UNDP with a lot of the agencies last year. And you really stressed to us, and I took this to heart, Princess Máxima, that we should be building financial inclusion into all the programming. If you're going to be engaged in social protection programs, cash grants, whatever, think about the banking aspect of it. And I think we're now seeing that rapidly being incorporated into programming. So please take credit for really helping us get that ball rolling forward in the UN system. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the panelists, and thanks for giving your comments today.
Thank you very much for that excellent panel. Our final speaker this afternoon is Dr. Rajiv Shah, the 16th Administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, who leads the efforts of more than 8,000 professionals in 80 missions around the world. Dr. Shah also is leading USAID Forward, an extensive set of reforms to USAID's business model, focusing on 7 key areas, including procurement, science and technology, and monitoring and evaluation, something that we also are doing here. Please welcome Dr. Shah.
Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon. It's very impressive that so many folks have come for this important launch today, and that so many of our colleagues have been standing through 2 hours of mobile payments. So we're going to give you a hand for sticking it out. It is a fascinating and important topic, and you're proving that with your tremendous commitment and interest today. I want to thank Her Royal Highness Princess Máxima for encouraging us all to be engaged in this area and do as much as we possibly can, and it's that leadership that has led to this great alliance here today. So many others Frank DiGiovanni, Ertharin Cousin, Helen Clark, Michael Joseph have spoken, our partners and panelists that you just heard from, and it really represents a coming together of so many different sectors, the public sector, the private sector, NGOs, all of which have this amazing commitment to have impact at scale for the very poorest people in the world, and an abiding commitment that if we in fact see this through, we can create systemic change, the kind of thing that can reach tens, hundreds of millions of people who otherwise don't benefit as much from the type of work we all try to do together. So I am genuinely honored to be here at this very unique moment, which is the start of what I think is going to just be a great and significant new partnership and program. I'm particularly excited because I've spent the last few weeks launching something we're calling USAID's Fall Semester. And it's an effort to go to college campuses around our country and listen to young people and hear about what they aspire to do. And in each place I've gone, folks have talked about, students have talked about getting involved in development and getting involved in global health. And they are so passionate and so committed. And I spend a lot of my time, and I see many of you do as well, in Washington or London or other capitals, kind of talking about why this is important. It's important for our national security to be able to work with our partners and ensure they succeed over time. It's important to our own economic prosperity. But on college campuses, this stuff gets down to its purest and most basic form. This is about how our college students in those settings want to express their own quest for personal meaning and commitment. And as I have had a chance to hear about the commitments that have been made today, each of these commitments gets us to a place where we can make that kind of a difference for so many people that otherwise would simply not be touched. So thank you. We all know that this subject is critical. We know that more than 90% of the adult population is effectively unbanked in many of the nations in which we collectively do our work. We know that more than 2 billion of these unbanked individuals now have mobile phones in their pockets, and that somehow we can bridge the gap using that unique technological platform. And in fact, we've all probably, many of us have had the experience of being in a surprising place and seeing this system start to kick in. I was visiting a dairy farmer way outside of Nairobi, and she showed me her cows, and she explained what she's been doing to help improve her husbandry of those animals and how that's improved their milk productivity. But then she whipped out her phone, and she showed me her M-Pesa account and how she uses that to do some transactions, and she showed me her iCow program, which is literally called iCow, that allows her to track the feeding schedule and be in touch with people who can offer expertise if something goes wrong. And when you start to see that, you really become very, very hopeful that if we can work together, we can somehow be transformational at a scale that is otherwise out of reach. But of course, for the problem for which we're gathered today, it's not so simple as just developing a great solution and putting it in place through some type of, however innovative, development project. We've all been working in this field, so we know that when you go to settings and you say, well, boy, why wouldn't you just do it on, do these payment systems on mobile phones, or why wouldn't you use electronic systems, and how can we bridge that gap? There's this chicken and egg problem where we sit with companies, whether they're cell phone providers or other banks, and they say, well, the demand's not really there. And then you sit with the governments, with NGOs, with private companies that represent a huge number of transfers and accounts, and they say, well, the products aren't really there, and we don't know that they're robust and tested and well-regulated enough to actually work. And so by coming together today on both the side of suppliers of products in this area, and very importantly, all of you that represented governments and NGOs and the like, to say, look, if we move en masse, if we move large volumes of payments and accounts quickly, we can create the demand that will transform the system. And that's why it's so important that Minister Abad spoke about the Philippines and the transition to e-payroll for a massive civil service. It's why we sat personally with President Aquino and heard his thoughts of how he can move 1.5 million conditional cash transfers to this type of a system over time as it becomes robust. That's the kind of demand that will create change. We sat with President Banda of Malawi, who talked about how important it will be for 300,000 civil service workers to actually receive their full paycheck by receiving it through an electronic system, and how in that setting, I know Rodger Voorhies just spoke, but there are banks there that have the trust of customers and people, and it's very different than the usual traditional payment systems. It's why we're excited Ambassador Hakimi is here, representing Afghanistan, who has also made a commitment to move their own payment systems to this cash, to a system that is better than cash. And we know that in our pilot programs where we've tried this, in particular with security forces there, those security forces reported receiving a 30+% increase in what they thought was their pay. They thought they got a raise just because they got their payment through this system. So, you know, we can do this by doing it together. Now, the other side of this with Citibank and Vodafone and TechnoServe and other partners that can help actually create the technical and product basis to make this work is just as important. And that's why we were very proud last June to sit side by side with Vikram Pandit as he announced Citi's commitment to do this work in over 63 countries around the world. And we all know that at the end of the day, the organizations that reach the most vulnerable people at their greatest point of human vulnerability matter the absolute most. Care, Mercy Corps, concern. These folks do this kind of work in settings where if they were talking about it, it puts the work itself at risk. But there have been situations in just the past few years where tens of thousands of people would not have gotten food if it weren't for using electronic voucher systems and aggressive and innovative programs like this quietly under the radar screen to help avert huge humanitarian crises at a time when it literally matters the most to the weakest and most vulnerable children on the planet. So having those great organizations be a part of this is deeply, deeply meaningful. At USAID, we're committed to doing our part. And our part is going to be everything we possibly can do. So we're introducing new language in all of our grants and contracts to ensure that USAID programs over time move away from cash and towards mobile payments and electronic payments. That's why we're putting more than $30 million into programs to assist our partners and government partners with this transition over time. Our internal estimate is that we and our partners will save over time 20% in overhead costs by moving to this system in those project areas. We will do everything we can to support this alliance because at the end of the day, the crowd that's assembled here knows that no single organization, no single entity can achieve the kind of success we all hope to see. Even in settings like in Kenya, where we're all excited about the tremendous progress and where nearly 80% of adults have some connectivity to M-Pesa, over 90% of all transactions are still conducted in cash. So we know that our work is cut out for us. But it did take some time. Others are experts here. My understanding is many decades for the American credit card industry to actually reach the level of scale and trust and engagement that we now take for granted. And we need to be focused on ensuring that that's our goal: widespread utilization, broad reach, a level of comfort with the security of these systems that will allow them to be genuinely transformational. And I'd like to conclude with just a point about what success can look like. You know, if this works, if we collectively, by working together, by raising the level of ambition, by raising the level of the scale of these commitments and moving millions of transactions onto these systems, encouraging dozens or hundreds of companies and affiliates to respond to that demand effectively, and just working through all the challenges we know we're going to see together as we work on this path, we believe we can create an environment in some tough settings that is more robust from risks of corruption and graft, that is more transparent for people who want to work and receive pay for that work, that is more optimistic about the fact that very, very low-income families, especially women, could for the first time have safe places to save and invest and move resources in a formal way. And we know that if this works, it probably will result in reaching huge, huge scale and being one of those very, very few things that can actually change the lives of the world's most vulnerable people. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you. Thank you for coming here and making these commitments and being willing to be on the front end of leadership on this when we know being on the front end involves taking some risks. And thank you for your willingness to stick with it as we make some mistakes together, but as through this Better Than Cash Alliance, we really do try to achieve something that's extraordinary. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. Thank you so much, and thank you to Her Royal Highness and to our panelists and to our guests for coming. Thank you for coming to the launch event. Our goal in inviting you here today is to inspire you to partner with us, either by making a commitment to transition cash that your government or your organization makes, or by joining us as a partner in funding the Alliance's work around the world. We look forward to talking with you more during the reception and to encourage you to explore the world of emerging market payments at the demonstrations you'll find on the balcony. So thanks again, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.